Hey, everybody, welcome to AM 950 Radio and the Santita Jackson Show. It's a joy to be with you today as we talk about immigration. That's right. And in the next hour, a moral revival. Yeah, we need that. We need that. And how we stay up and continue to move forward in the era, as many people would say, the era of Trump. But I was watching a program this morning. I love C-SPAN, everybody. And they had an expert on Canada and Canadian politics, and he said, we really have to look at what's happening not just as a right left issue, but as a populist issue. You see populist uprisings happening all over the world from right and left because people are moving, people are waking up. You could object to their conclusions, but the thing is, at the heart of it is people needing to be heard and people needing to be treated fairly. And so what we have to do is have some talks about that, which is why we are talking about migrants, the so-called illegals, although as my Bible and my parents have taught me, there's no one who's born in this world who is illegal. But where are they placed? And why are they pushed out of their place? No one just comes to America. People are pushed out of their homes. The Irish came here because they were being starved out, yes, by the royal family. They were. And everybody else came here except for Black people. Black people were brought here against our will. And we were made to work without pay to build the country against our will. That having been said, all of that's part of the history on top of stolen land. Don't ever forget that, by people who have been genocided, who've been relegated to reservations. The indigenous people have worse health and economic outcomes than anybody, including Black people in the United States and Canada. Think about that, everybody. And many of the so-called Hispanics we see are really indigenous people who speak the language of their conquerors. Hey, I'm not English, I just speak it because my colonizers spoke it, right? So we got to think about these things. And let's talk about H-1B, this visa program that has really put a cleave in the so-called MAGA movement. Well, certainly in the incoming Republican administration. Let's just put it that way, because it's President Trump's people are a little bit more complex than MAGA. I think we got to be really, really deliberate about understanding his demographics. If we don't understand them, there's nothing that we'll be able to do. We don't even understand the Democrats' demographics and the demographics of the independents. Terry O'Neill, President Emeritus of now Attorney Terry O'Neill, brilliant civil rights lawyer. Theo Hardiman, of course, brilliant author, host of his own show on WVON, the iconic Black Talk radio station here in Chicago. And of course, he's on from 6 to 7 a.m. Of course, we're right behind you on Keep Hope Alive on iHeart. But you have a book out now, and it is
You're Interrupting Gun Violence, the Public Health Approach. You can find it on Amazon.
all right, all right, all right. And he's actually going to smile for us today.
Yeah, I'm
Attorney
smiling.
Gerald,
Yeah,
that's right. Attorney Gerald Jones, who
yes,
is
indeed.
on with Attorney Barbara Arnwine on WOL in DC. But the great thing about radio is that you can hear it everywhere. It's at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. If you really want some great legal analysis, if you really want to understand our civil rights, chief among them, the right to vote, you need to listen to their show. Please join me on Blue Sky. That's right. I'm getting new followers every day. I'm so touched. At santitajackson.bsky.social. I'm on X, at Santita J and the Santita Jackson Show, but go to at Santita J. That's really the one I really go to. And Santita Jackson and Friends on Facebook. Everybody, you've been going to Santita Jackson, that page. I really appreciate it, but they have a limit. Facebook limits how many people you can have on your personal page. And they continue to kick people off. That is not my doing. I've gotten a lot of notes from you. You're like, you let me go as a friend. I'm like, no, that's what Facebook does. So please go to Santita Jackson and Friends. Everybody, please migrate over there. So what about the H-1B visa that brings in these technical workers, these highly skilled workers? And many are saying that they are taking American jobs. Hey, Mike, Shalom, Robert. Hey, Andre. Everybody like and share, thumbs up, thumbs up. That helps us with the algorithm. Please like, share, share, share. But it's a little bit more complex. Vivek Ramaswamy, who, along with Elon Musk, is looking at government waste, so called government waste. Okay, the Doge uh, Commission. Well, he and Donald Trump in the past have said that H-1B visas ought to be ended, even though Vivek Ramaswamy has used it at least 29 times. And what many people do not know is you do a little bit of digging, Theo Hardiman, about how these workers are treated. These very well educated workers um, who come in and they're so brilliant. No, they're brought in because they are skilled and they can be compliant because they are on visas and they can be frightened and they can be managed. And they are treated as indentured servants. People on the right and the left, Steve Bannon, and people on the left and reports have shown that they are treated very, very poorly. And they are not paid the wage that they would be paid if they were on the open market. That's the piece that we need to understand because guess what? That's also what we're dealing with when we look at the tent partnership for refugees. We've talked about that, Tio. We've talked about Attorney Darrell Jones. You're seeing workers getting squeezed from the top and the bottom. And you're seeing American workers being squeezed out from the top and the bottom. And there's nothing new about this. During Hurricane Katrina, the Department of Labor laws or rules were relaxed so that Central and South American workers could be brought in to work for cheap. And people who lived in the area, who were pushed out never to return, primarily Black, well, they were not allowed to get those jobs. You get it? We're getting gamed here. And I think we need to be honest about that. But let's start with this H-1B program that many people are saying, wow, this is a program that not only takes jobs from American workers, but the workers who we bring in are not treated well. Daryl, would you like to start things off for us? H-1B. What do we
Yeah,
look at?
thank you, Santita. And, Happy New Year to everyone and everything. All the festivities are now coming to a conclusion. Now it's the festivities of Capitol Hill. The H-1B visa is certainly at the top head of it. Now, traditionally, what the H-1B visa is that it was established so that when there were technical areas where American workers were in insufficient numbers to fill those positions, that it would allow the employer to go outside of the United States to foreign areas to attract workers that are meet those qualifications, the educational qualifications. Generally, we're talking about people that have a bachelor's degree or greater, or a technical area, or an area of precision, right, of technical expertise that's in demand, and we don't have sufficient supply here in the United States to be able to fill those positions. So that's what the H-1B visa was designed to do. And as it was being designed, it was very clearly specified that the American workers were not to be displaced by the foreign worker with the H-1B visa. Additionally, the H-1B visa recipient from another country was to be paid a wage that was consistent with the wage of the American worker and what they were receiving here. The only reason they're allowing the H-1B visa at its inception was because of the shortage of expertise and technical workers that were in particular areas. Now, what that has manifested into now is certainly the conversation that we're going to be having here this morning, and that is talking about how now they found that it's a cheaper workforce, right, worker pool that's out there that they can bring in, and in essence displace the American worker that is there because it's a cheaper workforce, cheaper source of income, source of labor. And so when you have the cheaper source of labor, you can then make more money, because that's what the corporation is about. It's about making money. If I can suppress the wages, increase my profit, I'm doing great. And if I can suppress it by bringing in this cheap labor source, and much of what's been happening now with it as it's established, we're seeing how major employers go through the process of really just focusing in. And I think Terry O'Neill has a great saying. She calls it, not just profit making that they're making from the business itself, but profit maximization, where they're trying to maximize their profit by limiting their outcome to the workers and the people that they employ, because it's all about the business of making money. So I think that the overall landscape of the H-1B visa process, Santita, is laid out within those confines. And what we're seeing happen now in these American businesses, where they're bringing in this cheap labor source, they're stacking them because they have to provide living arrangements for them. So they'll put 8, 10 of them in a room and tell them they can't leave, you can't be seen, you have no rights, you're stuck by the services you owe to me. That's where we start talking about the indentured servitude of these folks. That that they really are not free once they get here. They're supposed to have employment that's already lined up according to the H-1B visa standards. The employers are supposed to have the employment that's lined up. That's the reason they're being granted the H-1B visa, and they don't have the employment that's lined up. They get them here and they start looking for a job for them, and then start taking the money that they're receiving. We're taking, we're going to take back the cost that it was to bring you here. We're going to charge you for where you're staying. We're going to also charge you for the employment that you're now experiencing. It's sort of a temporary employer type situation where you're going to pay us for what you're making. So that this becomes their business, which is not what the H-1B visa practice was set up to do, Santita.
Well, it's interesting, Attorney Terry O'Neill. Bernie Sanders is, this is what happens in politics, right? He's siding, they said, according to this Newsweek and so many other headlines, with MAGA. Because he's saying, wait a minute, this program is being abused. And what you're doing is making an end run around American workers, not to get the best and the brightest. You can't tell me that North Carolina A&T, which is the school that launched, no pun intended, Dr. Ronald McNair, who died in the Challenger crash, one of the first MIT PhD, brilliant engineer and astronaut. He came out of North Carolina A&T, which has one of the finest engineering schools in the world. Howard has a great engineering school. There's a great engineering program between the Atlanta University Center and Emory. I mean, and those are Black colleges, okay? That's just some of them, right? But you also have Caltech, MIT, Stanford. My cousin got his PhD in engineering at Stanford. I mean, wait. What are you talking about? And the reason they're going to these countries that are struggling, as wealthy as India is, they also have massive poverty, massive. But they bring these people over here, and there are reports in Silicon Valley that really reported, Attorney Terry O'Neill, on the local level about the sad truth, if you will, of how they're treated as quote unquote indentured servants, living 6+ people to an apartment, because you can't afford anything in the San Francisco, Berkeley, Oakland area. It's one of the most expensive places on earth. And they're afraid. They don't speak out about their conditions. Why? Because they're on these visas. They're scared. It's when you have a scared workforce, you have an overly compliant workforce. You help me to understand, because you did bring up, as Daryl Jones said yesterday, a brilliant point about really the shift in the profit model.
Yeah, I was saying yesterday that back in the until the 80s and 90s, the law of corporations was not that corporations exist solely to provide cash profits to the shareholders. That was not the law. Delaware is the leading state for corporate law. It's not federal. It's a state by state law, and Delaware through the 90s moved, step by step to the right, to where by the end of the 90s, yes, indeed, under the law, the corporation exists now solely for the purpose of making profits for the shareholders, whereas previously the corporation existed for the purpose of making widgets or automobiles or auto parts or whatever. That was the purpose of the organization. And the management's obligation back in the day was to make profit for the shareholder, to pay back the bondholders, the loans that the bondholders have made, to treat the employees well, to be a good corporate citizen in the local community, to and to provide a product that does not explode in the consumer's face, right?
Or fall out the sky.
Right. Yeah. Right. Or fall out of the sky in somebody's backyard. Yeah. So, but over time, now today, the corporation exists solely for the purpose of enriching the shareholders. And as that has happened, who the shareholders are looks very different today than it did 40, 50 years ago. I mean, 50 years ago, literally, you might have bought shares in company ABC and you would get a little paper certificate saying this certifies that you owe 50 shares of company ABC. That's who owns the corporations anymore, the hedge funds and the private equity firms. And so that has dramatically changed the way corporations behave. Today, corporations exist much like United Healthcare. Right, the United Healthcare Group and United Healthcare insurance companies specifically is in the business of squeezing every single nickel they can get out of ordinary people, the people who need healthcare, out of the doctors and other healthcare providers, even out of the hospitals, yes, that are providing the care. The whole purpose is to squeeze as much money as possible to send it up to Wall Street and the hedge fund managers and the private equity firms. So we have that's kind of the economic reality of capitalism in the United States today. Now, H-1 visas, that's not a work permit. I think it's really important to understand how easy it is to exploit workers on H-1 visas. It's literally a visa. It is a piece of paper that allows you to get into the country. The employer has the right to hire you and bring you in and give you an H-1 visa. But you are not an immigrant. If you are in this country working under an H-1 visa, you are a guest worker. And the beauty of the guest worker program, not just in this country, but in other countries as well, is that there is never any path to citizenship for guest workers. The H-1 visas last, I believe, something like 6 years. They can be renewed. And workers under the H-1 visa program do have the right, for example, to jump to another employer if they get a better offer. And they can renew their visa if they move to another employer. But they have very few rights, right? Otherwise, and and it's very easy to exploit them because they are on this limited timeline. Now think about moving to a country for 6 years, right? And you start putting down roots. You can't help it. You build a community around you. Maybe you start building a family. But the thing is, at 6 years, your carriage is turning into a pumpkin, and you have to go back to your home country. So it's a very unsettled kind of life. And you can see it's easy to exploit workers. And remember, the corporations who are using H-1 visas are using people as things to produce profits for the venture capitalists that put the money into them. If you're talking about Silicon Valley, that's definitely what you're talking about. So Bernie Sanders, of course, is going to criticize the H-1B visa program. Note that the people on the right who are criticizing the H-1B visa program are doing so because there's this kind of blanket "we hate immigrants" messaging that they are most interested in. Sanders is most interested in two things. One, the working conditions of the workers who are here, be they American citizens or people on visas or immigrants or migrants, whatever, the working conditions. And two, the impact of migration and immigration and H-1 visas on American workers. That's what he's focusing on. But both groups, both the anti-immigrant people, we hate immigrants, especially if they come from Southeast Asia, or if they come from Africa, or if they come from South America. We hate Black and brown immigrants. They're going to come up the same way, seriously opposed to expanding the H-1 visa program that Bernie Sanders does, because the H-1B visa program is being exploited is being abused to allow this massive exploitation, bringing workers in. As Daryl said, there are some consulting firms. These are not the companies themselves. They're the consulting firms that say you're a tech company in Silicon Valley and you need so many engineers to come in and help build your product, you can turn to a consulting firm and they will provide you 50 engineers that you need to come in and do your code and build your product. Where's that consulting firm getting the people? They're called body shops. They're the ones who are bringing in people very often from Southeast Asia, from other parts of the country, and are sort of they're hiring them out to the tech firms in Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley might be paying $75, $80 an hour for this person. Guess what the person is getting? Oh, maybe half of that, and having to pay rent to the consulting firm and having to pay back the cost that the consulting firm incurred in bringing them over here, including the cost of the H-1B visa, which, as Darren points out, is completely illegal under the H-1B visa program. So it's easy to abuse the program, and the abuse, what the abuse looks like is exploitation of workers. Final point. I know I'm going on and on, but
no, you're explaining because we're not hearing explanations of this.
Right. And when you exploit workers that, as I've just described, what happens to the American workers? They're having to work for less wages in order to compete against the H-1B visa workers. So it's a gold mine for the oligarchs. Right? You want cash flowing up, constantly sucking it up from us and flowing up the cash to the top. It's a gold mine, because not only are you getting these workers for cheaper, you are now pressing down the wages of all of your American workers, because they have those wages have to.
But and I think we have to be that's why this description of the programs, because the same thing, we're watching the same thing happen to the differently labeled H-1B workers. They're just not under the same visa program, but it's the same program, the 10th Partnership for Refugees.
Yes.
It's the same thing. I've said that over and over and over again, T.O. I mean, it's the same thing that's happening. And if we don't understand the game, as we welcome Dr. LaShawn Latrice onto the stage, we're going to miss the point. I mean, because these people, the oligarchs, are having a field day. No pun intended, as we look at people in the fields. And whether you are, as Reverend Jackson says, PhD or no D, they're treating people as if they are refuse, as if they are trash, as if they do not matter. Because indeed, Vivek Ramaswamy, he said, quote, he wrote on X, the reason top tech companies often hire foreign-born or first-generation engineers over Native Americans isn't because of an innate American IQ deficit. He said, a lazy and wrong explanation. A key part of it comes down to the C word, culture. Tough questions demand tough answers, and if we're really serious about fixing the problem, we have to confront the truth. His emphasis. Our American culture has venerated mediocrity over excellence for way too long, at least since the 90s and likely longer. And that doesn't start in college. It starts young. And he went on to talk about all these television shows and really pillars of American popular culture that are popular all over the world. Indeed, the late, great Quincy Jones said that America's strength is its diversity, which really get flowers in its culture. American culture rules the world. Michael Jackson is still the biggest entertainer in the world. He's been gone more than 10 years. We gave you Aretha. We gave you Roberta. We gave you Barbara Streisand. We gave you, my goodness, we've given you the Black church. Nobody preaches like us. Nobody sings gospel like us. I can just keep on going and going and going. But what he was saying was something that I thought was very interesting. And thank you, Ashley, for pointing out TSU. My sister got a master's there, by the way. Tennessee State University's fine engineering program. You've got a lot of fine engineering programs from coast to coast. People are fighting from all over the world to get into our universities, to get into all of our programs, quite frankly. And so it's very clear. I think we need to be clear on the game here, Tio Hardiman, and that is just that has been my plea since we've been talking about since we've been talking about immigration. Because see, it's interesting. This is not called a migrant crisis. That is not because these people are non-white, and they most certainly are non-white. I don't care what their passports say. When you see them, you see colored people.
Right.
It is because, I mean, so they're bring this is a little deeper than that. It's a little, and I think and while many on the right are saying they don't want well, they want white workers to get these jobs. Steve Bannon is taking another tack. He's saying, you know what, this is denying black workers jobs. And he makes a very compelling argument because
Well,
all people on the so-called right are not. I just think there's a lot more nuance because I don't see enough Democrats, if you will, people on the so-called left pushing back in the right way.
Absolutely.
well, first of all, you have highly skilled workers here in the United States, number one. And number two, it's business as usual because it's been that way with a lot of corporations. It's profit over the people. So we have to keep that in mind. It kind of reminds me of the medieval days when you had the feudal lords, and you had serfs working on the sides of the castles, and they would throw them a little something every now and then. Put this in your mind. If a person comes to work on one of those visas, the H-1 visa, and they become situated over here in the United States, they're making a decent salary, a halfway decent salary. Now, 6 years later, you have to go back to your country. Plus, you're getting less wages than everybody else. I believe that the leaders of this country should take a look at making sure we identify all the qualified people here first. And let's not get so caught up in the profit margins, because if you look at the salaries of some of these CEOs throughout the United States, they make more money than you would ever make in your lifetime in 1 year for some of these CEOs. So that's something people really need to take a look at. But when you talk about exploiting workers, it's been going on for like centuries, right? Centuries. Not to go too barbaric with you, Santita. Look at what King Leopold did in the Belgian Congo.
Absolutely.
For the gold. I mean, like 20 million something people. So we have to
and look at what the British did in India.
That's what I'm talking about. So this goes a long way, a long way. So my main point is, let's look here in the United States first to see what kind of talent pool we have before we try to contract workers to come from other countries to do the work here in the United States. But any solid leader should know that, in my opinion. If you're really concerned about the advancement of your country and your people, that's something that should be mandatory before we look elsewhere. It's not like we don't have a pool of qualified people. All right.
But Tio, doesn't it really go to this point? I think I don't want us to dance around it. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for more workers to exploit. I mean, the country was built on that. It was built on
exploitation,
stolen land that they did not have to pay for, and it was built by workers whom they did not have to pay because they were enslaved. That's why that's why we have to dispel with all of these myths that really are lies about America. And I love my country, and my enslaved ancestors built it, and my enslaved indigenous ancestors, it's on their land too, and my Irish ancestors, yep, got that too. We all do, and they're close enough, and generationally, for me to have known stories about them. They were exploited by the British Crown. That's why they came over here from Ireland.
Exactly.
So the exploitation, I want us to begin to look at the exploitation that is ongoing, because we're having these fights, and I'm saying, don't just fight the power, fight for the power, and understand what you're fighting. Because I see people going after, in Chicago most prominently. We see this all over the country. Daryl Jones, you see Black people going after Mayor Brandon Johnson, who's a really good man. And he came in wanting to do good. But when you see these programs, when the Secretary of State has signed a memo of understanding with more than 300 corporations. Now it's more than 400 corporations to bring in the so-called low-skilled workers, so they can't be paid. Tesla just laid off 20,000 plus workers, and guess who they're bringing in? H-1B workers.
There you go.
Right.
Yep. It ain't rocket science. You know, I mean, and the corporate media are not explaining this.
But that's why you need leaders in power that can hold these companies accountable.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important, you know, because when you have all these wealthy billionaire type of leaders in the world, they're going to side with the corporations 9 times out of 10. So you need some type of leadership that can really step up to the plate and make sure we look out for our own people first. Okay. Even the perceptions out there when they bring in the low, let's say hotel workers and some of the people that work in that industry, there's a perception in the universe that people in America do not want those jobs. So there's a need to bring in all the other people to work the jobs from other countries. That may be true or false, but it's the same concept they're using. It's different when it comes down to the H-1 visas for the highly skilled workers, okay? It's a little bit different there, but something has to give, and it's all about leadership in our country. If we want to build the United States from the bottom up, it's all about us working together and holding these corporations accountable on every level. It's a difference if we don't have the workers. Then you seek to get workers from other places. I understand that, but that's it. That's all I have to say about it right now.
But you know, leaders, the leaders, followers have to make they have to hold their leaders accountable. It's not enough to, you know,
right.
Our great leaders have not just stood up there talking for themselves. They had an army of people behind them that made corporate America, the corporate world, and government officials pay attention. So with all of the protesting we're doing, if we're not speaking with a voice, with one voice, and making demands and standing outside and protesting. See, because what we're doing is we're doing a lot of talking, but we're not following up by calling elected leaders and saying, look, I need you to vote on this, or I need you to deal with this. We're going after a person. We're making it very personal.
Yes, indeed. You know, there was a book written many years ago. It's titled Future Shock by Adam Toffler.
Absolutely.
That book kind of like has a lot of a wealth of information in there. And it kind of projected what was going to happen in today's world, actually, right? So some people should take a look at that book and read it because it's happening right before our eyes.
And that book was written 50 years ago. My parents are like, boy, I had several
right. It was like, right. Everybody talked about that book at one time, right?
And you know, Santita, one of the interesting pieces that comes along with this, I think, is this. You know, when we're dealing with the H-1B visas, right? Before the employer hires anyone outside the country, they're supposed to look inside the country for an American worker. And with that, they must offer the job. You know, if you have 2 equally qualified people, it's got to go to the American, not to the non-immigrant that is as qualified or even more qualified than the American worker. The American worker just needs to be qualified in order to get that position. But one of the things that, and T.L. Hardman, I think, really put his finger on the pulse of it, because if we're talking about holding leaders accountable, let's understand that with the H-1B visa and now, you know, with the incoming administration and the TEMP program, the 2 people that are principal in advising the president about what to do, Ramaswamy, as well as Elon Musk, neither one of them are accountable to the American people. Neither one of them hold any elected position. They both come out of private industry. They're both talking about, what'd you call it, Terry? Profit maximization. That's what they're looking for. That's why, you know, I anticipate they're going to push this TEMP program even more. They're going to push the H-1B visa even more. And to put the cherry on top of what they've lined up, who appoints the Department of Labor that's going to be overlooking all this? Who appoints that? President Trump. Under whose advice? Under the advice of Ramaswamy and Elon Musk. This is all labor. This is all business. This is all corporate. That's what the scary part of all of this is that American first concept that was being sold to the everyday American, they're being pushed to the side now and being replaced with these low-cost workers. That's what it is, Santita.
What's scary to me is that it's happened under a Democratic administration, because it was a democratically appointed Secretary of State who signed the 10th partnership agreement for refugees with the creator of Kobani. Everybody's looking at Trump. This stuff is already happening. These people are being treated like indentured servants, slaves, for want of another term, because indentured servants buy their way out of enslavement. I'm saying this is a bipartisan betrayal because they're both supporting the oligarchy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, look at Trump, but we're looking at Trump and we're looking past what we got going on here. It's been going on already. I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
That's right.
we
That's
got 10 million plus people in the United States, if the numbers are to be believed, of migrants. How did they get here? When you look at us trying to overthrow the Venezuelan government, we tried to do that. We did everything we could to get Chavez out. Everything we could, even though, I mean, including interfering with his elections.
Yeah.
That's all we've ever done. And we do this sort of thing. Daryl and Teo Hardiman, attorney Terry O'Neill. I'm going to you, Doctor. Coming to you, Dr. LaShawn Latrice. We do this over and over and over again, and we relax when Democrats come in, and then we get amped up when Republicans come in. Instead of looking at the game that we're being played here, y'all, we're being played. In the meantime, what did you say? Profit maximization. You really got us yesterday with that, Attorney Terry O'Neill. No, because it's the culture has changed,
Right.
and now you have globalists who've come in here. Yeah, I've said it. People who don't respect borders. You know, Elon Musk, while he's over here living with our president, he's dipping into the affairs of other countries.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
we're seeing it because this is how he quote makes his money. I mean, oh gosh, Dr. LaShawn Latrice, because you are, of course, as you make noise for change, that's the name of your group, but you, of course, you are a community psychologist, and you've seen the impact of, what it does to people not to be able to get these jobs. I mean, we can't help but think of Joe Jackson. He and his wife Katherine Jackson had 10 children, 9 of whom survived into adulthood, who completely changed entertainment. And he was able to, and Mrs. Jackson will tell you, no, I got up and I fixed my 9 children breakfast. They walked, my husband went to the steel mill and went to work. And then they came home for lunch. And I was able to make dinner for them. And she said, and her job was to raise those kids to be at home. And they were able to do it, and it was tight, but
Mm-hmm.
on his salary as a worker in the steel mill.
Exactly.
Now we got, what is it? What some other countries trying to buy? Well, does anyone remember Bethlehem Steel? That's gone. Now they're trying to buy U.S. Steel. I mean, what is going on here? Robert Williams said that we are what? Well, I don't know if I can say that on the air, but it certainly we are not in a good position. I hear you, Robert. All for exclamation points. But it does something. It does something to the community, Dr. Latrice, when people can't get jobs. I mean, they can't go on a date. They can't. I mean, and they say, I'm not going to marry because what I can't provide. I mean, just Dr. Latrice, what do you make of this? Because I mean, I think we're being misdirected in this discussion about these workers and the migrants and the guest workers and all of it. Dr. Latrice?
Actually, I agree with you. I think it's a huge misdirection because what's being placed in front of us is not really the impact of what's happening within the communities and the people impacted by the decisions of people who are trying to make money off the backs of other people. But what it appears to be taking place is we're trying to develop a system of cycling slave labor and taking jobs away from the urban communities. So Black people will end up suffering because they have brought in people that they think they can pay very small, low wages to, but also at the same time make it into a profitary initiative. And so I think that they really want people in the everyday communities that they see people being migrated into. They want us to be upset with each other so we don't pay attention to what the real issue at hand is. And it's those people who have power and authority who are actually making decisions to line their pockets and not trying to make the communities better at all. So it's a traumatic impact any way you look at it, because you have a group of people that are being pit against other people. And of course, they want us to be fighting and talking about these people taking our resources. But the fact of the matter is, all we have to do is follow the paper trail to show who's actually gaining and who's actually losing.
Well, you know, Robert Williams says, look what's happening to all those thousands of call center jobs um, that have just been sent to India. And you
Yeah.
hear,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have people who they can't really help you and they want to, but they're not here. I mean, and you're trying to get your phone fixed. I'm like, well, wait a minute. I don't, would you look on the back of I'm like, I'm trying to understand you. And okay, I can't get an appointment because they've outsourced all of the jobs when you used to be able to call the phone company, for example, and just get someone to repair it. Now they don't want you to have a landline. So if the satellite goes down, you mean to tell me I have no phone?
That's true.
So I'm completely incommunicado, or is that the plan? Because when you have a revolution, the first thing that's seized is the communication system. And now all over the world, people are getting more and more restless as you have people who are literally moving toward trillionaire status. The British royal family, let us be very clear, they're already trillionaires. They are reported billionaires. But an Irish Republican investigative reporter said, no. They've been worth more and upwards of $33 trillion. Queen Elizabeth and now her son, they're the only human beings who own whole countries.
Exactly.
That is the point of having the Commonwealth, because they are able to get these countries together. We're going to protect you with what? With your little 5 boats? Are you for real? I mean, they got down. The last time I saw it was in the Falkland Islands.
Yeah.
The islands. They didn't even go into Argentina. They didn't dare.
Right.
So I mean, Terry. I mean, so where do we go from here with this? I mean, because I feel like we're not being told the real story, and that for me is really it's really disturbing, because when you try to have conversations about this, I always hear and I hear people, well, do you see what these migrants just got? They're getting the aid. Yeah, that lets you know what these people don't mind giving a little bit to these folks. They don't mind. They just don't want to give anything to you. They want to starve you out. Terry, I mean, what is this? Because what you described to us was a complete change in the corporate culture at the top and inside of the building.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's also important to remember that oligarchy is international in this country. You know, years and years ago, we used to talk about the NDP, the national domestic product. That had to change to domestic national product, because there was even back 30 or 40 years ago, there were so many so-called American corporations that had operations around the globe. So you really couldn't say it was that, you know, the automobile parts being made in China or Vietnam, for example, for General Motors, is that an American national domestic product or no? So we changed it to gross domestic product. That's the GDP, because commerce becomes internationalized. Well, oligarchy is internationalized, you know. And I've seen some outrage headlines lately about Elon Musk so-called interfering in the German elections that are coming up. And by interfering, what I mean is he's doing exactly what he did for Donald Trump over in Germany for the far right party over there. But think about it from his point of view, from the point of view of an international oligarch. It's the U.S., Germany, doesn't matter. He wants to own all of it. And the oligarchs believe that they're entitled to own all of it. And their processes around the world are the same. And by the way, who helped establish the international nature of the oligarchy? Why, that would be the United States.
Yes.
America. That would be because we felt free to invade Chile when Allende was elected. He was a little too socialist, a little too left wing for America. So CIA goes into Chile and establishes a dictator. Not because we love dictators per se, but because the profits of the American corporations demanded it. So when we look at oligarchy as an international phenomenon, and by the way, that's another reason why Donald Trump doesn't care that much that Russia, quote unquote, interferes in our elections, right? Because maybe Russia was just trying to say, I'm just trying to get the guy elected that's going to be good for me. That's the American way. Right?
But you know what? We can't talk about Russia when we know our Congress has been bought off and it's not been by Russia.
Right. Yes. Right. Yeah.
So everybody continues to talk about
yeah.
Russia, and on one level, no. We have another country and other countries that there's. You go to D.C. Come on, Daryl. That's where you are. It's a spook in every corner. Not even every corner, at every table. I mean, it's Spook City. It is.
At every corner.
It is. No. I went to college there, and local news. My father said, "Oh, one of the advantages that you will have in going to school in Washington is that international news is local news." You know that, Terry. You've lived in D.C. for a long time, and my sister said, and my sister and brother Yusuf, and really my baby sister had another kind of experience. I grew up in Chicago from the rooter to the tutor. And my brother Jonathan went away to school for a couple of years to boarding school, but he came back to Chicago. But Yusuf, Jesse, and Johnny, they spent their high school years in Washington. Jackie, round about 11 or 12, was in boarding school. And so she has a different orientation from Boston to Washington. And she said, I was in a cab one day, and because this is where she spent her formative years. And she said, I saw this guy kind of, there's some people you see and you kind of lock in. And she said, I realized, she said, it looks kind of interesting. Okay. And she kept on going. She said, you know what? And then I was watching the news a day or so later, and he was leading a coup. Mm. And, if he's in the United States, it's a coup of which we approve. This is what we do. In the meantime, Chaparral is saying that she's trying to get a real issue. She's been fighting with Children's Place for, she's a foster mother. And every time she calls, and mind you, foster parents are taking care of our children, trying to keep them safe. Well, guess what? She said she's been asking to speak to someone, a customer service representative. And of course, it's someone in India. She sent 4 emails and no one has responded. Mm-hmm. I mean, and no one's slamming India. See, I don't want to, because they're not the ones in charge here. Some of the wealthiest people in the world in India and many of the world's poorest. That's not right. And in all of these wealthy countries, these materially rich countries, that is, they have the minerals, they have the gold, they have the gas, they have the oil, they have they have some of the wealthiest people on earth. And then the teeming masses are poor. I mean, yeah. I mean, yes. Oh, but you got to unmute yourself, Terry. Oh, okay. Because I was trying to unmute you. Okay. I can't unmute you. You chose to mute yourself during it. Oh. Okay. Well, I mean.
Sorry. Okay, I found it. I couldn't find the little thing. Sorry. Just very quickly, what you're saying reminds me that, this Department of Government Efficiency that Ramaswamy and Musk are in charge of, this privatizing, a lot. It exists to privatize a lot of people. But I just want people to realize when we talk about efficiency, that is not a term that has any meaning whatsoever unless you say efficient for whom. Mm. Right? Because efficient simply means that the benefits have outweighed the costs. I get more advantage at less cost. That's efficient. So who's I? Who's getting the benefit of it? Well, because are the workers? If things are quote unquote more efficient, maybe that's because you are underpaying your workers in order to get more profit. That's efficient for the profit takers. It's not efficient for the worker. And so whenever we think efficiency in a capitalist system
Mhm.
under global oligarchy, never just end with efficiency. Always say efficient for.
Well, I just want you to know that Ashley King is on your side, Terry. He said, I agree with the barking dog. I am not mad at you. I mean, no, really, because we've been aiming our ire in the wrong direction.
Yes. Yes.
You know, and that is one of the things that is really disturbing to me. I only have a couple minutes left here. Phil Hardiman, how can we
Yes.
get? Are you bringing Bailey in? Bring Bailey in. You know,
Yeah.
Bailey, Daryl.
Yeah.
But you know, but because he's like, well, maybe Bailey's about this big, but and so is your dog, Terry. So there we go. Tio, I need about 30 seconds from you. And of course, on WVON from 6 to 7 a.m. Central Standard Time, every Sunday, you can catch him on WVON.
Oh yeah. You can purchase my book, like I said, on Amazon, Interrupting Gun Violence: The Public Health Approach. And then my second book is almost ready. It should be out in 2 weeks. It's titled Death of an Addict, Resurrection of a Man. So that's like a personal testimonial book for inspiration to people across the world, actually. So God is in the blessing business, everybody.
Amen.
Let's just keep making our moves for this year. You know, I set some goals for 2024. I reached 99% of my goals in 2024. So I plan to reach 100% in 2025.
I love
Okay.
that.
That's
Okay.
right.
No, and that's a word. Dr.
Yes.
LaShawn Latrice, unmute yourself. I got about 30 seconds for you.
Yes, I would just like to say that this was a very healthy conversation, but it was necessary. And I think we need to have more intentional conversations where we're actually pointing out those things that are used to detour us from real issues. Because what we do often is we spend a lot of time discussing topics that are not related to what is really happening. And so I think pointing to the fact that there is a group of people trying to continue to get rich while others struggle and stay poor, I think this is a necessary conversation. So I thank you for including it.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you are one of our leaders on the ground, and I just think it's important to get the information out to people so we can begin to have the right fight. Because we're tossing out a lot of wonderful leaders without really understanding the issues that they're facing. I mean, it's under the Biden administration that we have this war that has cost us billions upon billions of dollars in Ukraine. We don't know why we're there. 38,000 plus of them were brought just to Chicago alone. They're all over the country, and they're in Canada too. I'm not mad. You're seeking asylum, even though you won't let the Haitians in. You want to put them on Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. That's not right. We need to have that conversation, everybody. You know, but the thing is, we're not taking care of Americans. I mean, that was one when we were children. We were in Lee Iacocca trying to save Chrysler, and he did do that. And I remember my father always, we've got to buy an American car because you must support the American worker. Remember, look for the union label when you are buying your house dress or blouse, something like that. It was a wonderful commercial where you had workers on television as a little choir telling you, well, of course they had studio singers doing it, but you know, I got the point. You know, the point is saving the American worker and if you save the American worker, Daryl, you are going to save workers all over the world. Because when we fight for unions, then you have Solidarność over in Poland. You free them. And there is a ripple effect all over the world. Daryl, you're going to be on, for those of us who are listening to us live, on WOLDC at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. Miss Wanda down there in North Carolina, tell everybody about it. 30 seconds for you, Daryl.
Thank you so much, Santita. You know, one thing that I think that today's discussion underscores is the importance of the American voter to be certain that they follow up with what's happening with the elected official. It's the American worker, the American voter, that really has the ability to put their finger on the pulse and to create the change, to be certain that our American interests, our American workers' interests is at the forefront of every decision. And when they appoint and go through the process for the Secretary of the Department of Labor, we should be certain that we're pushing on our elected officials to be certain that they are cognizant that we're concerned about the H-1B visa issues, that we're concerned about the tent issues, that we're concerned about the American worker first before anyone else. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with foreign workers, but I'm saying in America, we need to focus on our American workers first. And that's what this is about, Santita. So great discussion. Look forward to going on it again, hopefully soon.
No, we're going to do it. And big ups to Congressman Ro Khanna, who comes out of Silicon Valley and the University of Chicago. Brilliant, brilliant young man. And he's been establishing programs between Silicon Valley companies and HBCUs to create a pipeline from the historically Black colleges to employ for these students to be employed in Silicon Valley. He's been saying for years, we're overlooking them. We're overlooking them. Attorney Terry O'Neill, you can close us out. Yep, 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 yep. I mean, and Mike and Robert wants you to mic up, and excuse me, Ashley wants you to mic up the dog. He just said, mic up the dog.
I keep putting myself on mute. Maddie is really having a field day.
I just want you to see this with Ashley from Memphis. He said, mic up the dog, please. So, okay.
She's even more passionate than I am. If anything.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, no, amen to everything that has been said here. Dr. Latrice, Daryl, Santita, everybody has said things just exactly right. I think, yes, we need to, I guess my mantra for 2025 is going to be think globally, act locally.
Yeah.
I will tell you, I have a New Year's resolution to reach out to women who look like me, who did not vote the right way, or who sat out and did not vote this past election, and to begin creating bridges and education and bringing people along to learn some of the things that we've been talking about today, because this is not out there. You're not going to hear this from the pundits. And so we really need to find ways, and I'm doing it locally right here where I live, right here in Nashville, to try to get that education out, move people in the right direction.
Well, I'll send you a link to the show so they can hear it, because we want people. Yes. This is a new media, and this is where you're going to get the information. This is where you're going to get it. I'm not depending upon other people whose interests are not here. Our interest on the Santita Jackson show, on Attorney Daryl Jones' show, really, it's to get it. We work for the people. We work for you. Right. We work for you. Right. Yeah. And that is really the point. We work for you. And we stand for you and stand by you. Sending you so much love, everybody. And the Santita Jackson Show, AM 950 Radio, the voice of Progressive Minnesota. Back in just a minute.